Democrats who may dislike Mr. Trump, but they don't like their own candidate either. And they may not vote for their own Democratic candidate either. Joining me now to chew on this one, Ben Ferguson, host of the Ben Ferguson podcast, Byron York, Washington Examiner, chief political correspondent, Fox News contributor. Welcome to both. Byron, starting with your columns, very interesting. It just, these Dems are too extreme, so they may not like Mr. Trump, but they don't like socialism either, or communism, or whatever ism it is.
Well, first you have to start with the president's job approval and how Democrats view it. The president is pretty unpopular overall in Michigan. Now, the Democrats are counting on disapproval of Trump to translate into votes for Abdul El-Sayed, the Democratic Senate candidate. Now, recent Fox poll showed Mike Rogers, the Republican, ahead of El-Sayed, 51-47. Okay, so El-Sayed's at 47. And then they looked at the same Fox poll, and they found that 58% of the people polled in Michigan said they had a negative, an unfavorable opinion of President Trump. And they're saying, wait a minute, 58% unfavorable of Trump, but only 47% say they're going to vote for El-Sayed. There's some people out there who don't like Trump, but they may not like El-Sayed even more. That's a big problem, and that's what they're worried about.
Yeah, and Ben Ferguson, I see that duplicating or replicating or something in Maine and Minnesota and probably other places too. And by the way, I don't think the polls are right on Trump. They're not likely voter polls, but I'll put that aside for a minute. I mean, I'm saying the GOP is doing better with the economy than these media polling, public polls would suggest. But to Byron's point, a lot of Democrats are going to walk away from socialists.
Yeah, I think they are. And one of the big places you look at this and you see the polling data, 22% of African-American voters are saying they're not going to go with the Democratic candidate. Now, that is a voting bloc that Democrats have just relied on and taken for granted. And what you're seeing now with African-American voters is they're saying this type of extremism, we believe, is not going to help our economy. We actually believe that Donald Trump is helping our economy more. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Those are huge if you look at the polling numbers with African-American and minority voters in this country. But I also think this goes back to even a bigger issue, Larry, and that's this. Is there enough people in a swing state that truly believe that America's way of doing things is now over and you want socialism or communism or Marxism? And in a swing state with those swing voters and that big middle independent, I don't believe there's enough there to overwhelmingly win statewide yet. Keyword yet.
Yep. No, I think it's a good point. Listen, Byron, you go back to that, I don't know if you saw it, the Thomas Edsall essay in the New York Times. The Democrat Socialists of America say that for the working man, but working people don't agree with their values. That's what the surveys showed, Byron. And to Ben Ferguson's point also, I've seen lots of polls, including John McLaughlin's likely voter polls. You say Republicans are for free enterprise or free market capitalism. That wins big over socialism. That wins very big, Byron. So all this, if the GOP makes the right messaging case, I don't know, Democrats going to have a problem. And I think a lot of these, the media polls are going to turn out to be completely wrong.
Yeah, a lot of research has shown that the DSA sweet spot are people with a lot of graduate degrees who are underperforming financially in their careers. And that's kind of who they are. So how many people is that going to appeal to? I do think that you're going to see a number of Republicans pointing out the DSA platform. The DSA has been kind enough to write down all of its positions and give them to us, like wanting to eliminate the Senate and want to eliminate the office of the presidency and the Supreme Court, and want to basically destroy the United States government. That was very kind of them to do that. And you're seeing people like Hakeem Jeffries and others say, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with abolishing the Senate. I don't agree with getting rid of the presidency. I don't agree with these things. And you're going to force Democrats to actually contend with what DSA actually believes.
Ben Ferguson, I want to abolish socialism. And I think that's a winning message, by the way. And I think Mr. Trump is going to make that message very powerfully.
Yeah, look, I think that's what you're going to see at the midterm convention.
Yes.
This is going to be a moment where
Yes.
do you believe that America is an evil, god-awful country that should be destroyed from within? That is the DSA platform, that every aspect of our government, the most powerful parts of it, the parts I think make America amazing, great country, and the checks and balances of power, right? This is about destroying that so that you can have a total communist, socialist, Marxist takeover. But there's also something else the president, I think, is going to do at this midterm convention. It's going to be important to try to get the wins afterwards. And that is point out, Hakeem Jeffries can come out and say, I'm not a card-carrying member of the DSA, but if you look at what he's done, Medicare for all in 13 and 22, and he also endorsed the biggest Democratic socialist out there in Mondani. He endorsed him. So you don't have to have a card. You can lie to the American people. You're still a Democratic socialist, and you created it.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it very much. Points well made.